Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean, and this is one of the premier Chicago sports podcasts, so I want to make sure that you guys are listening and subscribing. So make sure that you're subscribing on whatever podcast service you use, iTunes, Stitcher. If you're listening on YouTube, any of those things, hit subscribe so that you get this every time we release an episode every week. You get it right in your little inbox. Also, give us 5-star rating, leave comments, spread the word to your friends. Also, check us out on the web at swerskisports.com. That's SWERSKI sports.com. On Twitter at Swerski Sports and Facebook.com/Swerski Sports. And then before we get started, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. The Ice Hogs return home to the with 3 games at the The Ice Hogs return home with 3 games at the BMO Harris Bank Center. The next one is Friday, December 26th versus the Iowa Wild. Puck drops at 7 p.m. The Ice Hogs return home from a 6-game road swing to take on the Wild at the BMO. Fans 21 and over can come out early for another Blue Flames Lounge pregame party where they can enjoy free appetizers, live music, and drink specials. Doors open at 5:15 p.m. Make sure to check out icehogs.com for tickets and information. Tickets starting at just $8. Family fun for everyone. And at the day after Christmas, it's nice to spend a little time, quiet time with your family, friends at BMO Bank Harris Center to check out the Rockford Ice Hogs. Now that we've got them mentioned and we've got the intro stuff out of the way, all I can say is the season's almost over. We're almost there, guys. Almost done with this terrible, awful Bears season, and we don't have to watch them again for months and months and months. So that's a positive, I guess, right? Right? Somebody? Right? So what else can I say about the Bears? I'm not going to beat the dead horse with this whole Jay Cutler benching thing. Everybody else has beat it to death, but I'm just going to say that it needed to be done. But my confusion is, why do you go with Jimmy Clausen? Everybody knows what Jimmy Clausen is. Jimmy Clausen is a less talented Josh McCown, and Josh McCown is a subpar NFL career backup. Jimmy Clausen was out of the league when the Bears brought him in. His career starting record as a starting quarterback in the league before today's game was 1-9. Bring that to 1-10. That's terrible. That's not a good record. So I don't understand. He's in his mid-30s. He's not good. He's not the future of this team. Why don't you go with David Fales? You drafted him. You put him on your practice squad the whole year. And when somebody threatened to sign him send him away from you, you went and promoted him to the 53-man roster. So why not give him a chance? Deactivate Jay. Just completely deactivate him. Put David Fales as the starter. Put Jimmy Clausen as the backup. If it starts to become a disaster, you put in Jimmy Clausen, and he's going to at least right the ship somewhat and keep you steady if it's a disaster. So I don't understand why you don't do that, because then you at least see what you have. I mean, if there's any sort of Hail Mary with this season is, if you're Mark Trestman, you go, if I can take and produce a young quarterback that we can build this franchise around. Now, I'm not saying David Fales is the answer, but I'm saying that He's a really talented young guy. He can make all the throws. He's got a strong arm. He's football smart. Reason he dropped is he went to a small school and his measurables weren't what everyone thought. He came in at the combine and he measured under 6'2". It was like 6'1.5" or something like that. And that's going to drop you a lot when you're an NFL quarterback and you don't have all kinds of other intangibles going on. But Greg Gabriel, who used to be the head of scouting for the Chicago Bears under Jerry Angelo, he prayed, and I know you're going to say, oh my God, Jerry Angelo, any scout associated with him. But Greg Gabriel knows his stuff, and he's a very, very astute scout of college players going into the NFL. And he really has high praise for David Fales and liked him as a player coming out. So what I just don't understand is, why don't you go with him and see what you have? Is most likely probably at best a backup guy, but what's the harm in it? You're already going to be terrible. So if you lose, at least I think people are much more comfortable losing with an up-and-coming player rather than with old stale farts, which is what Jay Cutler and Jimmy Clausen are. So I'm fine with the benching, but I just need to understand why they didn't play David Fales. It just boggles my mind that you're not saving your job that way. You're not doing anything if you're Mark Trestman other than just riding this out. And with this West Coast offense, you basically script the first 15 plays. That's just pretty standard. But with the Bears is I can't remember the last game they played where they had success with their first 15 plays. The whole purpose of you scripting these 15 plays is that you're going to get your offense in a groove. You've been practicing these 15 plays and you've got them down pat. Everything is perfect. You're going to go out there and you're going to run your 15 plays and you're going to be as good as possible running them. And you're basically getting yourself in a rhythm, getting your quarterback in a rhythm, moving the chains and getting field position if you don't get points. That's the whole purpose of scripting these 15 plays is you want to get your offense going, get them in a groove. But the Bears, they come out and they just get themselves in a rut. It's week after week of struggling out of the gate. How do you practice for these 15 plays and just ingrain them in you and then still suck at them? That's just terrible. How does that happen? And Clausen's just not that talented. And but like McCown, it's nice to see how the offense is supposed to run. You have when Jay Cutler's in there, you get the same bad mistakes, you get the same forced throws. He's waiting too long to throw to receivers, so he's not hitting them in stride. And the thing is McCown and Clausen don't have nearly the talent that Jay Cutler has. And you're probably rolling your eyes, oh, Jay Cutler's got a strong arm, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, Jay Cutler's got a strong arm, and Jay Cutler's got the intangibles as a quarterback. He's just stubborn old fart, and he won't change. He doesn't trust in systems. He doesn't like people telling him what to do. He wants to do what he wants to do, and it doesn't work. If you could take the brain of a Josh McCown or Jimmy Clausen and put it in Cutler's body, you'd have a hell of a quarterback. But it's, you have Clausen moving around in the pocket. He's leading receivers with his throws. He's throwing fairly accurately. He's throwing to the spot before the wide receiver gets there. And it seems like Mark Trestman is calling plays better when he has another quarterback in there. It's like he's fighting a battle against Jay Cutler, and it's just not necessary. But it's what happens every week, week after week. So, you have the offensive coordinator / head coach making much more efficient and proper play calls with other quarterbacks in, and you have other quarterbacks that are accurately and operating the system more representative of how the coaching staff wants it to be. So if this doesn't tell you that you need to get rid of Jay Cutler, I don't know what does. But this is just an observation I have. What else? The offensive line played fairly well this week. You had to put in backups at both starting guard spots. So Long was out with a hurt hip, and Garza's inactive for the rest of the season with the injured reserve. So you had Ryan Groy, the rookie, and you had Michael Ola, the rookie. Put 2 rookies in at guard and facing that really tough Detroit Lions front four, and they actually held up fairly well. I mean, Donkey Kong Sue, he's going to smash you in the mouth at every turn, and you really have to double team him, and they did a nice job on him. He still made his plays, but he didn't wreak havoc on the quarterback like he can and has. But the big problem today was way too many drop passes. Alshon Jeffrey and Marquise Wilson just dropped too many passes. It's inexcusable. The D-line played pretty well, too. The cornerbacks played okay. Kyle Fuller could have had some better coverages versus Calvin Johnson, but he's still banged up and he's a rookie, and there's not too many people that can cover Calvin Johnson in this league. So it's a tough duty, and you sort of need safety help, and he just didn't get it. But where the defense is struggling is where we expected them to struggle: linebacking and safety play. Time and time again, the linebackers are not there to clean up these plays or make the tackles on stretch plays. Look at that Reggie Bush touchdown in the first half, the one where he bounced it out to the outside and had a long run for a touchdown. That should have been a minimal to no gain, but there was poor linebacking play, so you wind up with a touchdown. And then there's several of the Golden Tate and Megatron catches where you have the corners that have decent coverage, but there's no safety help. No safeties are coming up. What's going on? I don't understand. You have to improve in these spots if you expect to win. You don't need to have superstars, but you at least have to have people that are capable of making the plays and being in the proper position, which it doesn't seem that this Bears linebacking core and safety core are able to do. If you think about it, look at the drive, the last drive of the last drive of the game for the Lions. The defensive line's pretty good, but they ended up, they dominated that last drive by bad defensive back penalties and poor linebacking play that they couldn't come up and stop the run. So the Lions just ran the ball down the Bears' throat, and the defensive line can only do so much. Their whole job is they're supposed to plug up the holes and take on the offensive linemen so the linebackers can clean up the play. That's what they teach you in Pop Warner football and in high school football, is the linebackers should be leading your team in tackles. These linebackers should come up and clean up the play. The defensive line is creating a roadblock, and the linebackers make the tackle, and that's not what's happening here. If the defensive line doesn't make a spectacular play, then it ends up having to be defensive backs that come up, and it's just really pathetic. And then you've got defensive backs Tim Jennings where you don't turn your head on a long pass. That's just asking for a penalty. That's asking for it, and then to set up a winning touchdown, it's just inexcusable. And then the big blow of the game is Willie Young's injury. The rumors are that it's an Achilles injury. So when the MRI shows up, or when they do it tomorrow, we maybe get the results tomorrow or Tuesday, we're looking at a 9-month recovery time. You couple that with Lamar Houston's torn ACL, and we're looking at 2 starters that potentially will start next season on the PUP list, the physically unable to perform. That's really not good for your team, because those are 2 guys that you have significant cash locked up with, and they may not even be able to start. And they're 2 key pieces that you need to build this defense. And if you can't trade Jay Cutler, you're already in a pickle with your financial situation. So to be able to replace those guys, that's tough. So the Bears are already in a jam now where you lose your best defensive end and your big time for defensive end / defensive tackle signing. So where do the Bears go from here? Mel Tucker just has to go. That's just a given. You've got back-to-back seasons where you have the worst defense in Bears history. When we thought the defense couldn't get any worse last season, they go and have this season and show they are worse. You can't possibly defend bringing back Mel Tucker. You just can't defend that. That's just ludicrous. He's got to be gone. He's got to be the first one gone. And then you have the longest tenured Bear in Chicago history and the former special teams captain of the Chicago Bears criticizing your current special teams coordinator and how much worse he is. And as I've said before, if you listen to the show regularly, you know, but if you don't, I was talking with Chris Kluwe, the former longtime Minnesota Vikings punter, and now he does play-by-play of games on Twitter. And I was talking to him during the last Vikings-Bears game, and I asked him what the big difference is between the awesome special teams of Dave Toub and the terrible special teams with Joe DeCamillis. And he flat out said, you lost one of the best special teams coordinators in the NFL and replaced him with somebody that pretty much sucks. And Patrick Mannelly, the longtime former Bear, the longest tenured Bear ever, and the special teams captain, you have him saying a similar thing, that Joe DeCamillis' blocking schemes don't allow for big runs, and you're not protecting the punter. The punter is routinely getting taken out, and he's had at least one block this season. I'm drawing a blank if there's more because it's just like a traumatic experience this year. But if there hasn't been more than one, then there's been several that were close. So you can't protect the punter on punts. You can't return kicks. You have constant penalties on special teams. It's just atrocious. So Joe DeCamillis has to go. And then you have Aaron Kromer, who's in the center of this whole leaking out information about the Bears and what they think of Jay Cutler. And you have him in the center of that and crying on front of national audience. So how can you honestly bring him back? So if you replace Joe DeCamillis as your special teams coordinator, Mel Tucker as your defensive coordinator, and Aaron Kromer as your offensive coordinator, how in the world can you defend bringing back Mark Trestman? You can't. You can't defend that. So it's just really ludicrous to think that his job is going to be safe. Which brings us to the big question. What do you do with Phil Emery? Does he come back? You sort of put yourself in a tough spot if you let Emery stay and choose the next head coach. What you're doing there is you're setting yourself up where you have a general manager that's going to be on a tight leash. He's getting a second chance to fix the situation with a head coach. And if he ends up screwing that up, what you end up with is you're firing your general manager, you're paying 2 head coaches that you fired, and then you have to replace everyone anyway. So I don't understand how they circle that wagon and get around that without having to fire the general manager as well. The big problem is that the Bears, they have a history of hiring people with no experience in that position. They promote up. They hire coordinators to be head coaches. They hire position coaches to be coordinators. They hire college coaches to be in the NFL. They don't ever hire somebody that was former a head coach or former a GM. They don't do that. That's not their style. And I don't see them doing that now, even though they should. The NFL is pretty much a really tight-knit boys club. And Phil Emery just doesn't fit in that. He doesn't fit in that group. The McCaskies don't fit in that group That family's just not part of that group. So they're always seeming like they're outsiders looking in. And regardless of what you thought about Jerry Angelo, and I don't think that highly of Jerry Angelo, and I knew he had to go as well, but he was way more involved in that boys club than Phil Emery is. I mean, basically all the NFL GMs sit around going, man, Phil Emery's a nerd. And they're right. What the Bears need is a president of football operations. If they want to beat the Packers, if they want to beat the Patriots, they need to build the infrastructure of those teams. Those teams have this awesome infrastructure and this well-oiled machine that they can keep producing high results because the machine is pumping out good players and good performances. The Bears rely on like catching lightning in a bottle in order to win. You know, you need Devin Hester returning record numbers of kicks and punts, and Mike Brown returning, amazing interceptions for touchdowns at key moments in order to win games. And that's not feasible going forward and to be sustainable. So you need like a president of football operations that's going to be the buffer between the old crotchety McCaskey family and the general manager, somebody that's like a football guy. You need a GM that's part of the NFL club so he can go in there and talk GM shop with other GMs, make trades, be part of that good old boy network. And you need to bring in a head coach that matches the philosophy with you and meshes with how you want to build your team. And you need to have a machine that drives the players, not the players driving the machine. With this team, like today was a prime example of this loss where you have no discipline. That isn't just systematic of the coaching staff. That's a whole organizational dysfunction. You have talent on both sides of the ball. Bring in a real football man to be the president of football operations. I'm not saying these guys are the key. I'm just throwing off names so I be that jerk that just says get somebody good and doesn't name somebody that's good. What about a Bill Parcells? What about a Ron Wolf? What about a Mike Holmgren? And by being president of football operations, unlike a GM where it's just a long, diligent amounts of work and you're doing the grunt work and you have like all these vast responsibilities, the head of football operations is you're overseeing all of this. You're sort of the overseer. You're picking the general manager. You're picking a general manager that fits what you want to do. You're helping him make that choice of the head coach. If you're the GM and you're not sure, you take the gamble on signing the Jay Cutler. You go and you get that outsider perspective, not really outsider, but you get that perspective of your president of football operations, somebody that just has all of this experience, has won Super Bowls, has been in the playoffs a lot, has done a lot in this league. You have them as kind of like a consigliere in if you're talking Italian mafia. Is you need somebody that shows that they can build a team, and they have built a team in the past, and they're helping you handpick the coaching staff and the general manager that's going to build this machine for you. And you can't just do it overnight, but you need to have a football man in there. You can't have George McCaskey or Michael McCaskey or any of the McCaskies be this person that just unilaterally hires a general manager or hires some sort of stupid consulting firm that helps them identify general manager options. That's just stupid nerd stuff. Hire somebody that already has the guys they like in their head from just being so in tuned in the game for so long, and they come in and go, this is the guy I want, and here's why. And they see how they build a machine, and you have a situation like with the Packers and with the Patriots where they keep winning. They lose a part, they plug it in. You Pittsburgh Steelers do the same thing. You want to create that machine where you are a perennial winner. Salary cap doesn't stop you. Injuries don't stop you. You just win. You plug guys in and you win. You don't have to sign a big-name free agents all the time because you keep drafting people and plugging them in. You want to be able to build a whole team from your draft and just spot pick up players here and there in the draft. I mean, in the free agency. But the Bears don't do that. They have to make huge free agent splashes, wind up in trouble financially, and then you end up getting stuck and having poor players and lack of depth. So you need to build this organization from the top down. Let them instill discipline and a winning attitude. Let them fill in the holes of this team. Let them bring in a new GM and a coaching staff and a team philosophy. And that's really all I have to say about the Bears. I'm so frustrated, and I'm so glad the season is almost over. The only other team I'm going to talk about today is the Chicago Blackhawks. And I don't think anyone following the Blackhawks were that surprised by the trading of Jeremy Morin. I mean, he was like a healthy scratch like 13 times in a row or something ridiculous like that. And then they sent him down to Rockford. So Morin was pretty clearly in the Coach Q doghouse. And the organization as a whole was down on him, regardless of whether it was warranted or not. I think the guy has a lot of talent. I think he plays hard. I don't know. He just got in on the dark side of the organization and got in Q's doghouse, and that was done for him. So the rumblings are that he was demanding to be traded. So it was kind of a foregone conclusion that we were going to see this trade happen. So they moved him to Columbus for defenseman Tim Erickson. He was 23-year-old defenseman. This is where I don't quite understand the trade. I get that you have to move Morin. He's a distraction to the team because he's quietly demanding the trade. And maybe his trade value is sort of nil at this point because he's been healthy scratch like 13 games in a row. And these consistent benchings. You can't build trade value that way. But to get a young defenseman that's going to be a restricted free agent at the end of the season doesn't seem to make sense to me. I mean, you've got a good stockpile of a defenseman in Rockford. You got Clendenning and Johns and Dahlbeck. They're all ready to come up, and there's just not enough spots for them all to play. Is this some sort of salary dump? Because you're going to have to make some tough choices at the end of the season. So maybe it's because you can let Erickson go because he's going to be a free agent, not have to pay him. So at the end of the season, he just washes clean. You don't have to worry about trading him or figuring out how to maneuver around his cap number. He's just gone without a trade. And then you can seamlessly move up a defenseman from Rockford. I don't know, but that's the only sense I can make of it. And then a few weeks ago, we were talking about the Blackhawks struggling, and we didn't want to get to the end of the season and have to really press to make the playoffs and then exert so much energy doing that you have trouble maintaining that level in a long playoff series. And that's basically what happened after the 2010 Stanley Cup season. The Hawks now, they they actually reeled off 8 straight wins and moved into second place in the conference behind Anaheim. So what are we seeing different in this streak that we weren't seeing before that, especially at the beginning of the season? Some of the offensive woes were related to like bad puck luck, as Eddie O likes to say, but some of that started to clear up, and some of the more tangible things that actually happened that you can point to other than luck and good bounces and things like that. Outstanding goalie play. The Hawks during that 8-game winning streak had a 1.6 goals against average in that 8 games, and 4 of the games they only allowed 1 or less goals. We're starting to see Corey Crawford earn that huge contract, and the Hawks rode him pretty hard for a long streak. You even got some nice starts by Antti Ranta and the hometown kid Scott Darling. They all combined for a .95 save percentage in that 8-game stretch. So that's just some great goalie play. And I mean, you've got great defensemen in front of him. I think Scott Darling put it a good way is because he's a guy that is playing much better in the NHL than he does for Rockford in the AHL. And that's not to take away what he does in the AHL, but he seems much more comfortable at the NHL level, and I think it's having veteran defensemen who are yelling little things here and there to him to help him be in better position and to watch for certain things and to let them know where they're going to be, so he has a better sense of what's going on. I think he's very accepting of those helpful hints instead of taking it as criticism or feeling bossed or something like that. And that's good. So he picks up on that, and he really seems to thrive on that. Then you've got the penalty kill. The penalty kill was phenomenal during this 8-game stretch. They killed 24 of 25 penalties, moved them into the number 1 spot in the NHL as far as penalty kill. You've got guys that are just willing to put it on the line, playing really... they're playing tough-minded, and they're playing smart hockey, keeping in their lanes, keeping position. They're not going outside of what their penalty kill philosophy is. They're just playing their roles perfectly and doing what they're supposed to do, and it's yielding good results. Also, the offense is starting to find the back of the net. Even against the number 1 team in the conference, the Anaheim Ducks, the Hawks went to their house and dropped 4 goals on them. That second line of Richards, Versteeg, and Kane is just super hot. I mean, sort of sucks now because Brad Richards has his day-to-day with an upper body injury, but that line was just smoking hot. And then you've got that fourth line where they just keep putting the pressure on and putting the pressure on and putting pucks on the net. And that's good when on the fourth line you don't lose the energy and you're keeping pressure on the opposing goalie by throwing pucks at the net. But that's been a key for this Blackhawks, is keeping that offense going. Finally, staying out of the penalty box. In only 1 game on that whole trip did the Blackhawks have more penalty minutes than their opponent. And that was that St. Louis game where things got really physical and really out of hand. But the Hawks still dominated that game. So that's a big key, is keeping out of the penalty box, taking more chances on the power play than the other team. Because if you think about it, having the puck on a power play, not only do you have 2 minutes where you have a man advantage, but for 2 straight minutes you almost aren't allowing them to have an offensive possession. So that leads to your goalie feeling much more comfortable and less scoring chances. The offense performing, penalty kills, goalie play, all of this was a recipe for a really great run. And this wasn't just 8 straight wins. A big chunk of this was during the circus road trip and playing on the West Coast for 2 weeks. So that's really impressive. And when they got out of that streak, it's not like they went into tank mode. They ended up losing on the road to a really tough, talented Islanders team. That was a really hungry team, and you watched how hard they played. That win meant a lot to them. And the Hawks lost by 1 goal. They had the tough shootout loss to the Blue Jackets, it was nice to see Jeremy Morin playing well, but you just don't want to see it against the Hawks. You want to see it against like the Red Wings or the Flyers or something. But those 2 games that the Hawks lost, but they've won 3 more. So this team is still rolling. It's not like this is panic mode by any stretch. But even continuing on, the Hawks just keep their complete domination. Tonight they just completely dominated the Maple Leafs at home. So you're seeing the Hawks just peaking right now, and hopefully it doesn't come to a point where they're peaking too soon and you see it taper off of their playing level. You just hope that they can keep chugging along without injuries. So that's really going to wrap it up for this edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk. Thank you guys for listening. Check us out at swerskisports.com or Twitter at Swerski Sports and Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, and check out the Rockford Ice Hogs at icehogs.com. Thanks for listening, and till next time, bear down.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van. And she looks like...
Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down, I wanna